Namaskar. Myself, Dr. Deepti Bisht, Professor, Department of Kaya Chikitsa, Faculty of Ayurveda Sciences, Jyoti Vidyapeeth, Women's University, Jaipur. In today's session for class BMS 4th year, I am going to take session regarding fever or pyrexia. So let's start with the introduction. What is pyrexia? Pyrexia or fever is defined as having a temperature above the normal range due to an increase in the body's temperature set point. The increase in set point triggers increased muscle contraction and causes a feeling of cold or chill. This results in greater heat production and effort to conserve heat. When the set point temperature returns to normal, a person feels hot, becomes flushed, and may begin to sweat. Rarely a fever may trigger a febrile seizure, with this being more common in young children. Fevers do not typically go higher than 41 to 42 degrees centigrade, that is 105.8 to 107.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Fever is a common response of the body to different injuries. This includes viral, bacterial, and parasitic infections such as influenza, common cold, meningitis, urinary tract infections, appendicitis, COVID-19, and malaria. Non-infectious causes include vasculitis, deep vein thrombosis, connective tissue disease, side effects of medication, and cancer. Pyrexia differs from hyperthermia in that hyperthermia is an increase in body temperature over the temperature set point due to either too much heat production or not enough heat loss. Treatment to reduce fever is generally not required. Treatment of associated pain and inflammation, however, may be useful and help a person rest. Medications like ibuprofen or paracetamol may help with this as well as lower the temperature. Children younger than 3 months require medical attention, as might people with serious medical problems such as compromised immune system or people with other symptoms. Hypothermia does require treatment. Now the types. Different fever patterns observed in Plasmodium infections. Various patterns of measured patient temperatures have been observed, some of which may be indicative of a particular medical diagnosis. First one is continuous fever, where temperature remains above normal throughout the day and does not fluctuate more than 1 degree centigrade in 24 hours. For example, in cases of lobar pneumonia, typhoid meningitis, urinary tract infections, or typhus. Second type is intermittent fever, where the temperature elevation is present only for a certain period, later cycling back to normal. For example, in malaria, leishmaniasis, pyemia, or sepsis. Third is remnant fever, where the temperature remains above normal throughout the day and fluctuates more than 1 degree centigrade in 24 hours, for example, in infective endocarditis or brucellosis. Among the types of intermittent fever are ones specific to cases of malaria caused by different pathogens. These are quotidian fever with a 24-hour periodicity, typical of malaria caused by P. knowlesi or P. knowlesi. Tertian fever with a 48-hour periodicity, typical of later course malaria caused by P. falciparum, P. vivax, or P. ovale. Cotton fever with a 72-hour periodicity, typical of later course malaria caused by P. malariae. Now, pathogenesis of fever. As we know, pyrogens are substances that induces fever. There are two types of pyrogens, exogenous and endogenous. Exogenous pyrogens, also called as toxins, are external to body and are of microbial origin. Endogenous pyrogens are cytokines released from monocytes, which are part of the immune system. In general, they stimulate chemical responses, often in the presence of an antigen, leading to a fever like I1, IL-1 alpha or beta TNF, interferons alpha, beta, gamma. Endogenous pyrogens act on the thermoregulatory center in the hypothalamus, and this action is mediated by prostaglandins, hence the roles of NSAID. Now, PGE2 release. PGE2 release comes from the arachidonic acid pathway. This pathway, as it relates to fever, is mediated by enzymes phospholipase A2, cyclooxygenase 2, and prostaglandin E2 synthesis. These enzymes ultimately mediate the synthesis and release of PGE2. PGE2 is the ultimate mediator of the febrile response. The set point temperature of the body will remain elevated until PGE2 is no longer present. Now, causes of fever. There are various causes of fever like infections, diseases due to immune mechanism, diseases due to vascular inflammation and thrombosis, granulomatous diseases, inflammatory bowel diseases, neoplastic disorders, metabolic disorders, viral infections, malaria, enteric fever, respiratory tract infections, urinary tract infections. These type of infections usually cause short febrile illness. Prolonged fever is generally seen in infections like chronic malaria, enteric fever, pyogenic infection, UTIs, amoebic infections, brucellosis, tuberculosis, post-infectious cases like in rheumatic fever. There are some immunological causes also for prolonged fever. They are rheumatoid arthritis, systemic lupus erythematosus, autoimmune hemolytic anemia, glomerulonephritis. Now, what should be approach to a patient of fever? First of all, important point is history taking. That is, pattern of fever should be examined, like if it is high grade with chills, then it is suggestive of malaria or urinary tract infection. Associated features should also be seen, like cough is present with fever in respiratory tract infections, pulmonary coughs, or pneumonia cases. Vomiting is present with fever in cases like malaria, viral fever with gastritis, viral hepatitis, fever with drug-induced vomiting. Pain in abdomen with fever is generally seen in Koch's abdomen, amoebic liver abscesses, amoebiasis, or peritonitis. Loin pain is usually seen in pyelonephritis together with fever. If pain is moving from side to side, then it may be indicative of pot spine. Now, similarly, pulse rate is seen very high in myocarditis, skin rash with fever suggestive of measles, chickenpox, etc. In such cases, pattern of rashes and history should be examined. Pallor with fever is present in malaria and worm infestation. If lymphadenopathy is present, then enlargement of salivary gland and testicles are seen together with fever. Presence of jaundice is seen in viral hepatitis and malaria. If there is movement of alienaceae, it is strong suggestive of pneumonia. Herpes simplex is commonly seen in cases of malaria and pneumonia together with fever, then if edema is seen suggestive of UTI, pain in joints with swelling, loss of mobility, tenderness is suggestive of rheumatoid arthritis. Loin tenderness can be seen in pyelonephritis, hepatomegaly in hepatitis, hepatic abscess, splenomegaly in malaria, kala-azar, hemolytic anemia, and leukemia. Spinal movement, chest examination, signs of pneumonia, heart sounds, neck movements, all these things should be watched in case of any patient comes with fever. Now, what investigations should be done? First of all, blood should be tested for total leukocyte count and differential leukocyte count, for malaria parasite and for ESR. Urinary examination should be done to exclude any urinary infection, Vidal test, C-reactive protein test, ASO titer, serum uric acid, liver function test, alkaline phosphatase, and X-ray PAView. These all are investigations which are required in patients of fever with associated symptoms accordingly. Now, management. As fever does not necessarily need to be treated, and most people with a fever recover without specific medical attention. Although it is unpleasant, fever rarely rises to a dangerous level even if untreated. Damage to the brain generally does not occur until temperatures reach 42 degrees centigrade, and it is rare for an untreated fever to exceed 40.6 degrees Fahrenheit, that is 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, conservative measures should be adopted while treating the cases of fever. For this, if temperature reaches the extremely high level of hyperparexia, then aggressive cooling is required, which is generally produced mechanically via conduction by applying numerous ice packs across most of the body or direct submersion in ice water. There are limited evidential support for sponging or bathing in feverish children with tepid water. The use of a fan or air conditioning may show that they somewhat can reduce the temperature and increase comfort. In general, people are advised to keep adequately hydrated. Now, medication. The medications which are usually used are antipyretics. These reduce fevers or lower down the fever. The antipyretic drugs like ibuprofen is effective in reducing fevers in children. It is more effective than acetaminophen in children. Ibuprofen and acetaminophen may be safely used together in children with fevers. Ibuprofen is also superior to aspirin in children with fevers. Additionally, aspirin is not recommended in children and young adults, that is those under the age of 16 to 19 depending on country, due to the risk of Ray's syndrome. Using both PCM and ibuprofen at the same time or alternating between the two is more effective at decreasing fever than using only paracetamol or ibuprofen. So these were the some common antipyretics. Besides these medicines, if the cause is diagnosed, that means for example, it is case of rheumatoid arthritis, or it is case of cough abdomen, or it is case of pneumonia or pneumonitis, then the additional treatment should be advised together with the treatment of lowering down the fever. So this was all about the mechanism, pathogenesis of fever and approach to a patient of fever. In next lecture, we will cover some other topics. Till then, goodbye. Have a nice day.